You can sign in to Sage Intacct with the internet browser of your preference. Once we are here, as mentioned, let's go over to order entry and then take a look at this overview. So here in the tasks section, we have a typical Q2C business process or workflow. It starts with a quote, which then becomes a sales order, perhaps once we have received a purchase order from the customer. Then it is converted to a sales invoice once we are ready to ship or invoice the items or services that we have sold to this customer. Notice that there is a step in the middle that has been grayed out depending on the business process in your environment. This could be customized. That would be an order fulfillment step, the picking, packing, and delivery of the product to the client prior to moving it over into an invoice. This would apply, for example, in a distribution environment. There are also a number of other transactions that are easily accessible from this page, including the splitting and merging of transactions. Up at the top in the data section, we have easy access to various items and master files. We have here the customers. We have warehouses, and note that items can be processed differently depending on which warehouse they come from. We have product lines, and product lines are useful for reporting or the mass updating of prices. We have our items themselves, be they non-inventory or inventory. And we have access to the price list here as well. Let's now see what drives this process in terms of setup and configuration. And we'll start off with the transaction definitions. You'll notice on the left here that there are a number of workflows that are active in this environment. The ability to have multiple workflows within one environment is what allows companies to grow and change without having to re-implement or look for another solution. In Sage Intacct, you can have different workflows running concurrently, as seen here. You're not locked into one way of doing things. You can also use the terminology that applies in your business. For example, over here we have a pro forma invoice starting off this particular workflow, but you might prefer the term quotation, or you might want to have both documents, and the workflow could definitely be customized that way. On the right-hand side, under the inventory effect column, we can see how inventory might affect each of the transactions. For example, our orders have absolutely no effect on inventory, whereas our sales invoice decreases both the quantity and the value of the inventory. This is customizable. An adjustment, for example, may have an effect on value, but not on quantity. And then in this environment, we have credit memos that have no effect on inventory because they are an incorrect charge and not necessarily a problem with the quantity or the item itself. Once again, this may be different in your environment. The ability to convert to a credit memo also eliminates the recapturing of data. Let's now head over into the general configuration screen. We've already discussed the workflows at the top here. Looking at unit of measure, we can see that it is possible to add custom units of measure. We can enable various functionalities, such as allowing for a transaction to be in draft mode. Then, just to make it a bit more user-friendly, we also have the option here to restrict the list of contacts that displays to the contacts only for the customer that has been chosen for a particular transaction. That just eliminates the risk of error a little bit. Then down here, we have dropship and buy to order. Both these options activate a purchase transaction based on a sales transaction with the level of automation that works for you. For example, you can set up the system to automatically create a purchase order once a sales order has been saved. Further down, you can also decide which dimensions will be standard when you enter transactions, and we will discuss dimensions a little bit later. Let us now walk through the process. So back to order entry, and we'll start at the beginning of the workflow that begins with the pro forma invoice. Notice that the top pro forma invoice has a status of pending, and therefore it can be converted, whereas the second one has already been converted. This top one, if I click on convert, you'll notice that the only option for me to convert to is a sales order, which is the next transaction in this particular workflow. So as much as they are concurrent workflows, they are absolutely independent, so there's no risk of confusion. Let's go into this existing pro forma invoice. And here I'd like to show you a couple of fields. So for example, we have fields that are in blue, as you can see, and anything that is in blue is a hyperlink. So I can use it to drill down further, which is what I'll do for this customer. Once I've done that, I'd like to show you some of the fields that are available for customers. So this is our customer master file, and we see various information that we would expect to. Under additional information, you can also assign a GL group to a customer, and in this way you can post a specific customer's transactions to a different general ledger account. You can also assign a sales rep to a specific customer. You can decide how you'd like to distribute your statements and invoices. You can select a default shipping method. Going further down, we see we have printed document templates, and this allows for you to add custom templates for this particular customer. So those custom templates can be saved to Sage Intacct and then can be used for specific customers. Going up to the contact list, here we see that we have a variety of addresses, and it is notable that you can have an unlimited number of bill to and ship to addresses, and you can have multiple contacts per customer. In the restrictions page, this page is specific to a multi-entity shared environment, or an environment where, for example, you may have multiple branches under one company. The chart of accounts, customers, and suppliers are shared across all entities. But here we see we can restrict customers by location or by department. Okay, leaving that, here we see that we can have attachments. We can upload a number of attachments to a particular transaction. And once we do that, these attachments are essentially stored in the cloud and can be accessed from the transaction. Going down to the details of this particular transaction. So there are a number of options in terms of adding dates for shipping or delivery. We have our need by and ship by date. We also have restrictive dates, so to speak. So do not ship before this date or after this date. If I go further down, earlier on, remember I spoke of the dimensions that would be standard for a transaction. This is where they appear. So dimensions are essentially labels or tags which tell the story of the transaction. One or more dimension can be tagged to a transaction, as you see in this example. We have 11 dimensions that come standard with Sage Intacct, and there are an unlimited number of user-defined dimensions that can be bought. Dimensions can be used for grouping and filtering in reports. And if you'd like to know more about that, we have another demonstration on dashboarding and reporting. At the bottom of the page is this collaborate feature. And this bit of collaboration can help the collections department to keep track of outstanding debt and communications with customers so that one customer services rep can pick up where another rep has left off. Collaborating in this way can decrease days sales outstanding, which ultimately increases cash flow. If we go into the history tab, we have complete visibility into the journey that this pro forma invoice took. We can drill down further into any of these documents. We'll see here that it started as a pro forma invoice, the document that we are in. It was then converted into a sales order and then into a sales invoice. And if I click into this invoice, you'll notice that there is a payment details tab at the top here. And there I can see that this particular invoice has been partially paid to the value of $25,000. Let's go and look at the reporting. So there are various reports that come standard with Sage Intacct. For example, a customer aging report is something that you'd expect to see, but Sage Intacct improves on even this familiar report by making it available in a graph format as well. I'm going to pull a simple order entry status report. Notice on this page how many filters are available, so I can really customize this report to my needs. Location, you'll notice by the red asterisk, is a compulsory field. So let's select a location there. And then let's pull this particular report for the current year as of today's date. So I'm going to view that report. And once it's opened, I'll just enlarge it a bit so that you can see clearly. So once again, lots of hyperlinks on this report in order for me to drill down to the information. What we're seeing here are all the transactions that we've looked at in today's demonstration. Notice then at the top of the page how many options I have in terms of distributing this report. So I can print this report in hard copy. I can process and store this report, which means that I can schedule it to send it later, or I can generate it and store it for access either in Sage Intacct or in a cloud storage location. I can email this report. I can add it to a dashboard to make it easily available to other users so that they don't have to dig too deep to find it. I can memorize this report. So remember, we saw a number of filters earlier. If I like the filters that I've chosen and I don't want to have to choose them each time that I pull this report, I can memorize those filters. And then I can export this report in a number of formats. So let's go back and review. We've seen that the solution offered by Sage Intacct includes structured, organized, and predictable processes in one system, customized to the needs of your environment. This leads to improved cash flow. So the number of days for which your customers' accounts are due will decrease. You will have the cash that you need when you need it, and this will assist you in your planning and forecasting. Also, a simple tool such as the Collaborate feature can improve your communication internally, facilitate improved communication with customers, and overall lead to better relationships with your customers. So, how can Sage Intacct enhance the way that your current quote-to-cash process works? Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you for your time.